Hi everyone. So this is going to be 10 things you need to know before you go do an information technology degree. Now before I start, let me make sure I say this is for the Bachelor's in Science Information Technology degree. And every university is different. Don't expect my degree and my experiences to be the exact thing that you would find in yours. So let's start with number one. So the first thing is there's going to be a lot of programming in this degree. That's just how it is. There's a lot of programming. So don't think you're getting into tech here without having to do programming, because you're certainly not. That's the thing. There's a lot of programming. I had it work out really well for me because I love programming today. I loved it when I learned it. And basically it made my career. I'm really glad it had a lot of programming. If you don't think that you like programming, this is probably not the degree for you. So number two is go for internships immediately. This is a tech degree. This is very competitive. Getting into college is important and getting the degree is important, but you really also need to get internships. It will help you a lot. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get a job without them, but it will make a huge difference in not only how easy it is to find a job, but in how good of a job that you eventually find. Go for internships right away, first year. Don't wait to apply. Just go ahead and start applying. Start looking into technologies that you like and apply at internships at companies that support those technologies. Can't emphasize this enough. The people that didn't do internships had a lot more trouble when it came to actually time to find a job than the people who had internships. Now, I got kind of lucky because when I was going into my degree, at the job I had previously, I met someone who did SEO work. So I was, given kind of a tech-related job that really helped me get into an internship near the end. Now, hadn't I known this, I might have been in a lot more trouble because I don't know if I would have gotten my final internship had I not done this. And without that internship, I honestly don't know if I'd have the job I have today. Probably not, almost certainly not. I can actually say that. So look for internships as early as you can. Just keep applying. Apply everywhere. Everywhere you can practically work, try to get an internship there. Just churn those things out. Maybe you customize your resume where it makes sense, maybe you don't, but keep putting them out there. Eventually, somebody will bite. So number three is that you are going to learn a lot of skills in IT. There are probably going to be some that you don't like, no matter what you do. You're going to learn programming, you're going to learn networking, you're going to learn database administration, you're going to learn some level of project management. There's a lot of stuff in there. So make sure that you're ready for that. It is very diverse in the skill set. There's a lot that is there, and don't think that you're going to need to know all of it for your future job. But I will say, at least for me, having a basic knowledge of it has been important. So be ready to try to absorb those skills, try to do well at everything you do, but don't expect to like all of it. There's going to be some stuff that you just outright hate. I will say, hopefully that thing isn't programming, because you're going to be doing a lot of that either way. I know a lot of people that didn't really like programming, but they were okay with it. They could get through it. And a lot of them didn't like that it had so much programming in it, the degree I mean. But they got through it and they focused the skill they liked and they got a good job with it. So again, a lot of programming, but a lot of other skills. Be ready to at least meet one that you don't like. Okay, number four is hopefully one that you'll actually end up finding comforting. And that is that everyone ends up in the same place. That's usually the answer I give to people asking the question, should I do computer science? Should I do computer engineering? Should I do IT? Should I do software development? There's so many choices, and it makes it really difficult to actually choose something. Well, let me tell you something. My first internship, I sat down next to basically three people that were at the same level as me throughout the course of it. There was another IT major, there was a computer engineer, and later on, there was a computer science major. So we all kind of ended up doing the same job, and the ones that I still keep up with are actually working in the same field now. Sometimes in slightly different roles, but really we're doing the same thing. And that's something that's important to remember, is that there is not a huge gap in where you actually end up in tech in most situations. Now, there are some jobs that some degrees are more cut out for. If you want to do some kind of high-level machine learning, polygon-level math-type programming, computer science might be the better choice for you. If you want to work with hardware at a lower level, computer engineering could be a better choice for you. Not to say that you can't get into those things with an IT degree, because you certainly can. there are people that don't have degrees that can get into it. So again, just remember, don't really compare your degree to the other degrees, and don't fret too much which one you choose. You may be better off choosing for more practical reasons as far as what do you think you can get through versus, what job will I be able to get? Because the truth is, a lot of you guys are going to end up in the same place. Okay, this is one that is actually more about the job. Just realize no matter where you end up, it's likely to be a kind of stressful job. Now, I wouldn't say it's going to be as stressful as, say, being a doctor, but the truth is that it can be stressful. If you're working in an IT department, say, you're working on systems that people use, and they may need those systems to be able to actually do their job. So if something goes wrong with that system, whether it be some kind of programming fault if you're a developer, or maybe it's a network issue or a database issue, God forbid, they're going to kind of need you to fix it now, whenever now is, right? It's kind of a high priority thing. If it's in the middle of the night, you might get a call in the middle of the night. That is how it works. Now, in my personal experience, I haven't had too many issues with this. In fact, I personally have never received any 3 o'clock in the morning calls. But there definitely are times where you're going to have to work outside the average, 8 to 5, where maybe if you're doing some kind of push to production, you can't do that during, peak or off hours. And there's a lot of things that can cause you to end up working maybe a little harder than just 8 to 5 standard. Now, one of those things is if you're working for a company that deploys software to the public, or your software is your product as a company, and you're working on that main product, there's a thing called crunch time, and this actually does exist in any kind of development, even more IT level development, that there's a deadline. It needs to be out by a certain date, and if you aren't getting it there fast enough, you're going to have to work a lot of overtime. This happens to a lot of people that do commercial software development. And the reason is, especially if the company is centered around this technology or this software, well, there's other people trying to do the same thing, and you have to beat them to market, because whoever's first is probably going to be most successful. So for people doing commercial development, that is a real thing, crunch time, especially, God forbid you go into game development. That's going to be a real thing for you, maybe most of the time that you work with the industry we have now. But anywhere, there's going to be a crunch time thing, and if you're doing some kind of IT thing or some type of thing where you maintain stuff, yeah, you're maintaining that, you're responsible for it, and it is essential. It's become like electricity these days. So if something goes wrong, you may be needed. Okay, so number 6 is you need to learn to build your soft skills if you don't already have them. Now, there's a lot of fancy stuff around soft skills and working with other business people, but the truth is it just means being able to deal with other people. Here's the reason why. Because these days, no one really does anything alone. It just doesn't work that way. Things are too complicated for you to just do it all yourself, and there is no oversight, and they just trust you, you're that much of a genius. That really doesn't happen. If it ever did, it doesn't happen anymore. So today, you can be as smart as you want. If you can't work with other people, you're going to have a hard time, and they're not going to want to work with you. And a company's not going to want to hire you. So you have to get your soft skills in a good place, and everyone can always work on these skills. And you don't have to go to some kind of, session where you pretend to be doing things in order to build these skills. You really don't. All you have to do is just be more outgoing and meet people, make friends, experiment with interacting with them. This is probably not a problem for some people, and you might think I'm crazy for even mentioning it, but I think most people going into IT are some level of nerd. There are definitely some nerds out there that have issues with communicating and making friends and being outgoing, and I'm not trying to down you if you're an introvert. That's okay. You can do this being an introvert. It just means that you kind of push yourself to get better at interacting with people. And the easiest way to do that really is just to do it in life. And that might mean, when you're in college, before you're in college, go do that thing that your friend is inviting you to, And although this might not be the best advice now, this is probably better advice for later on down the road. Try to do it in person, because a lot of people work in person. If you're doing it online, that's not actually the worst thing, because there's a lot of remote work now. Getting good at remote conversing is a real skill these days. So not to down anybody who is doing a lot of this remotely now, or even always does, playing video games online. I do that kind of thing all the time, as you can, see behind me. So that can help. The online stuff can help. In-person helps a lot. If you're the kind of person that gets really nervous or has certain social situations, like we all do, we all have social situations where we kind of run into trouble. Try to work on those things. And above all, try to get a little bit more outgoing. It's okay to be an introvert, but at the same time, when you're doing an interview, they're there to get to know you. And if you have trouble expressing yourself or being, in that very moment, or just that interview, being outgoing enough so that they can see kind of what kind of person you are, that can kind of spell problems for you. I mean, I had issues with this where before I really started with a lot of things, before I got older, I had a lot of trouble expressing myself at any level to people that I didn't know well. So I had to kind of develop strategies over time to overcome that. I suggest that you do that if you're doing an IT degree and you feel like you have deficiencies here, because it will really hurt you to get a job where otherwise, you may really deserve to be in that position, but you just got nervous in the interview, so somebody else got the edge. Okay, so number 7 is, well, this isn't really something you need to know, but you need to have a good computer. You're not really going to be able to use the public library computers to get through these classes or this degree, because basically you're going to need to write programs, you're going to need to have that with you, you're going to need to take it home with you. I'm not saying you can't pull it off. With what we had there, our classes, there were definitely at least a few classes where you really technically couldn't pull it off if you were trying to use a public computer. You're going to need special programs in a lot of cases that you won't find on a public computer. So not only do you need your own computer, I recommend having a good one, because you're going to be spending a lot of time on it. Now, it can be a laptop. For me, I did have a laptop as well as a desktop computer, and I mostly use the desktop computer, though I did use a laptop sometimes. Benefit of a laptop is you can have it with you in class and take your notes on it, and if that's your main computer, that's fine, but make sure it is a good one, because you're not going to want it to get bogged down by some of the larger things that you do. Some Java programs are a little bit of a bear to run. They just are. We actually had a sysadmin class where we had to run 3 virtual machines of Windows Server 2016. That is not an easy thing for a little laptop to do. And a decent one, it can pull it off. Apparently it did. My friends that had, decent laptops got past it. But I imagine near the end of the assignment, it was going pretty slow, and they were probably really struggling with it, as I know they were, because they kind of told me. My computer was too. My gaming rig was struggling with it. There's just a lot to running a virtual machine. It's usually done by really big, strong machines. Now, your IT degree might not have that same class, and even the one I took, I don't know if they still teach it that way. It kind of seemed unrealistic to me that they would expect, people to have computers that can run that well enough to actually complete the assignment. But people get through it, so just know that going in, if you're going to invest in anything and you don't already have a good computer for yourself, get one. Number 8 is there's things that you need to know about math. So if you think you're doing IT to get out of some of the higher level math that computer science makes you do, you will get out of that. That's true. You won't get out of the programming, as we've discussed, but you will get out of some of the high level calc maths, linear algebra, things like that. But it's not a catch-all for avoiding math, not even close. You're still going to have to do, all your college algebras. You're still going to have to do up to trig. You're going to have to do physics. I had to do physics 1 and 2, not a math class technically, but it's completely math-based. You're going to have to do something called discrete mathematics, which, if you hate math, I can't imagine a worse kind of hell, because it was pretty rough for me. And I don't hate math. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And it is like, take the numbers out of math and turn it all into symbols and make it insane. That is discrete math. And I don't want to say anything more about it, because I got to be in that class. I'm lucky that I got through, because it was a rough math class, it just says. So there are hard math classes in an IT degree. Don't think that there are not. Beyond that, there are other kinds of math that you're going to learn in your different classes, like computer science. You're going to have to take that, at least in my degree, I did. And that's a pretty math-based class, even though the homework assignments and stuff are programming-based. You're going to have to do quite a bit of math on the exams. You're going to have to do kind of new kinds of math, like binary math, and learn hexadecimals. So there's a lot of math in it. It's just not the crazy linear algebra, calculus 3, type math that you might be afraid of. Okay, so number 8 is be looking into specializations. Now, what I mean by that is you're learning a lot of different skills. So in the end, you're not going to end up just doing all those skills as some kind of IT everyman. You're most likely going to end up focusing on one of those skills in particular, and knowing the other ones will be useful to you in some way or another. Now, the thing about trying to specialize is that you normally just can't say, all right, this is exactly what I want to do, and go in and do it before you start taking classes, unless you have some kind of outside experience, because you're just not going to know what you like. You might think you know what you're going to like, and I do recommend in your flow chart, try to hit something that you like early, because then you'll know if you really like it, and if it turns out that you don't actually like it, then you have other options, and you can take the next best one, try that, see how it goes. Now, as far as specializing, there's a lot of ways to stand out with specializations. One is to do certifications. Now, this doesn't sound easy because basically you're already doing a full-time college workload. How are you going to study for a certificate exam? It can be done, and it can be done in breaks, is what I can tell you. And it's not always necessary for all specializations. There are, like, if you want to get into programming, certifications really, I would say, are not necessarily the best way to go. They help. But if you're going into networking, yeah, you should definitely get a certification because it will help you out a lot. Now, there's also minors. So look at the available minors to you because you're likely going to need to take a lot of tech electives. So not your, gender studies type stuff, something more like it has to be a tech related class, but you're not required to do it for the degree, but it does count as an elective for the degree. Now, what you're going to find in these classes is usually they're offered to a lot of different tech degrees like computer science and computer engineering because they all have a certain kind of inventory of electives that you need to fill. You need to check some boxes. And I would recommend, kind of early on looking at those different minors and maybe, putting a pin in one that you think is good. You can try to back out, possibly, at least I could, if you really didn't like it on the first class. I personally did a security and computing minor. The only thing I learned from it is that I really did not want to do security. It just wasn't my thing. I like programming. That's what I learned from my minor. But that being said, for anyone, having a security minor looks good. For me as a programmer, I can't say I didn't learn anything but that. There are things I use in my programs. There are practices that I use that I learned from those classes. And I'm glad I did it, even though I also learned a lot of stuff that I definitely didn't want to do, like reviewing, loads of paperwork. That just wasn't really my thing. So you'll get something out of actually focusing versus just being all over the place when it comes to actually having something to show, because you can show a minor, right? Even if it's not the minor you wanted, it's better than nothing. So yeah, choose a minor, try to specialize. There's more stuff than that. You can join clubs. You can do outside events, you can do personal projects. It's hard because when you start, you kind of you pick up something, you like it for a while, and then this new thing comes along, you pick that up and you do that for a while. It's really easy to fall into that, but as you get near to the end, it's important to kind of stick with something. Take one of those things that you did, say, you know what, out of all those things, this was my favorite thing. I'm going to push with that. If you haven't already messed up your ability to get a minor by then, I'm going to push for a minor in that. I would not recommend actually delaying your graduation for a minor because these days I don't really know how much the minor really matters. But it's definitely nice to have if you could have had it anyway. So yeah, try to start specializing. It's important. Okay, and so coming out of number 9, going into the final and number 10, find your edge. Now this sort of goes along with specializing, but it's a little bit more broad. And this goes to a lot of college degrees, not just IT, but because IT is very competitive and very diverse in the skill set, I think it applies even more. Now what I mean by that is you're in college not only to learn technical things and pass tests and write programs, you're also there to kind of discover yourself and what you're good at. Now, this is really hard for a lot of us to do because basically it's just a hard thing in life to know where you excel and where you don't. This is where having a good friend group can help. That you're not always that great at judging what you're doing well. And you might think that you're good at something that you're actually not. Those things that you're good at or not good at, or you thought you were good at and you're not, and you thought you were bad at and maybe you're not so bad, they might have nothing to do with your degree at all, but they're still going to basically inform how you interact with other people. Not to say if you think you're bad at something or you're figuring out that you're bad at something that you shouldn't engage with it. It just means that you might need more work in some areas than you thought. So the final thing really though is to find your edge. What are you good at, right? What do you have that other people coming out of college with the same degree, what do they not have that you do? And that's kind of a difficult thing to put your finger on. You're really just discovering yourself and playing towards your strengths. And you're gonna need to do that when you get out to get a good job, or at least you're gonna want to. It's gonna help you, right? Figure out what works well for you and be proud of it, be confident in it, because when you go to do interviews, that confidence will show. So that can also apply technically. There might be something that you're particularly good at in a specialization that you've decided to specialize and you notice that you really have a passion for or find yourself to be very good at this one particular thing. I had an interview question which is basically, what do you think you're good at? So having a good answer to a question like that, it will really help you. And a lot of interviews are very open-ended. You know, going back to the soft skills, you need to be able to answer those questions well. And that doesn't only mean having good soft skills, it means having an actual answer. So knowing yourself, knowing what you're good at, and being able to focus on those things, both in what you do and in how you respond to interview questions, will really help you along. Okay guys, those are my 10 things. I could probably throw some more things in there, and I'll probably, you know, after this, with something else I should have said, I'll make another video about that if that happens. So if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me make more content like this. You know, I do a lot of work outside of making YouTube videos. This is not my full-time job, and I basically manage to do this once a week. So subscribe to my channel if you like this stuff. If you didn't like it or you disagree, please tell me why you did, because I could be wrong. I am not infallible. A lot of this is based on my experiences, and things have gone well for me. Maybe I avoided some pitfalls without knowing it. Maybe I got lucky somewhere, and maybe there are things, you know, some things I did that were actually not good and I just got by anyway. So put your comments below on what you think. Okay guys, have a good night.